right now in our research, just over 40% of respondents have named AI as a top contributor to technical debt.
I'm thinking like, man, I'm installing all this stuff and now it's increasing my technical debt. Explain to our audience, like, what does that look like? And then how do I solve for that?
Classic example is one of the first core use cases around AI and Gen AI was to do your development faster. If it generates code for you, you think of that as a starter. You've got to have the human augment that code and make sure that that code is fit for purpose. It's got the right ethical standards. Otherwise you have potentially bad code that is there to help you that sits dormant in your system, and it's adding good value in the short term, but in the long run, it just sits dormant, adding a level of technical debt.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of IT Visionaries. And today I have a special guest. His name is Andy Tate, and he's the Cloud First lead at Accenture. Now, for those of you who don't know, Accenture, kind of a big deal in tech. They kind of have a few employees. I'll let Andy best introduce the company. But Andy, welcome to the show.
Albert, thanks a lot. It's absolutely fantastic being here. And it's interesting to see and hear Accenture being a big deal in tech. We sort of just really are a company out there. It's 750,000 people all over the world globally, just really focused on helping our clients sort of raise their level of performance. And that can be on anything. It could be really addressing their people, their skills. It could be helping them get value from taking cost out, or helping them get value from driving more revenue or more, sort of user engagement with their customers. And so we're really a company out there helping our customers and our clients reinvent themselves to be better for their customers.
Absolutely. And for our audience is not familiar, Accenture, you described it as kind of like the way you described it, more of a knowledge and services based company. But give an idea of what your customers look like. Because, as with always, some of our audience might not realize like the size of projects you guys, your team advises on.
The size can vary. We focus predominantly on what we call the Global 2000 companies. So that's the top 2,000 companies in the world. And of course, give or take from there. And as I mentioned, we've got over 750,000 people spread across the globe. Those, team members of mine, colleagues of mine, all over the globe, will sort of engage with our clients, some knowledge, but, really predominantly we look at strategy, we look at consulting, we look at technology, and we look at operations. So those sort of elements of an enterprise. And we'll deploy a team which might be a sort of cross-sectional team, a multidisciplinary team that sort of beds down with that client, understands their problems, understands their challenges or their desires or their objectives, and then we sort of work to help them execute on that.
Well, let's dive in. I think that's a great intro, and let's dive into how this is done and what you are currently seeing in the marketplace, because we saw that Accenture, of course, released its latest report, Reinventing with a Digital Core. And there's one thing that jumped off the page, which is the idea of what needs to happen to even begin to take advantage of AI. I want you to know that every single guest, despite my AI, I would say resistance, I would love to talk about more things than AI, but literally every company that's come on the show wants to talk about their AI initiatives, what they are doing in investing in the space. But before a company could ever get value out of AI, they need to be set up to succeed. Andy, let's start, because it sounds like you are quite knowledgeable in this space. What are these companies needing to do to even begin to take advantage of what AI promises?
You said that really well. A lot of people sort of think, let's just apply the AI and, magic turns out. But you've got to be, I would say, really intentional, Albert, about getting ready for AI and making sure that you are sort of AI ready and your end-to-end systems are all ready. We in our latest research, we found that over half of executives believe that they can scale generative AI in particular. That's obviously, one of the biggest promises at the moment in their enterprise within sort of 6 to 12 months. And, I would say probably 1 in 3 of them are extremely confident that they've got the right data strategies, they've got the right sort of core digital capabilities to make that happen. But to make it happen, Albert, they have to first sort of really look at what we call the digital core. And that's, I would say, a foundational, critical set of capabilities within an organization that span 7 core areas. The infrastructure. Do you have your infrastructure, be it in a data center, your data center, or a public data center, or have you got it at the edge, or where have you got it? The security around your estate, and how do you sort of integrate your various elements in your estate and have that sort of composable as well. And then the other areas around a control plane. How do you control and orchestrate your end-to-end systems? All of that just before you even look at your data and your AI backbone. Where's your data? What AI do you have? Where's your AI? How is it being, sort of touching your data? And then way above all of that sits your digital platform, so your application. So those 7 elements of the digital core are fundamental to getting you AI ready, so to speak. And then beyond that, the second step I would say is to really embrace, what we call 3 core tenets in what we found in our research, what we call 3 core tenets, to be reinvention ready, and to have a reinvention ready digital core. And those tenets really help support you continuously reinvent, just continuously, because you can't have those seven elements, put them in place and believe that, okay, I'm done. It's a continuous thing. And those 3 core tenets are really, you've got to start by building that cutting edge, tailored to your industry digital core. Have you got it right for your context? Then you've got to boost it with investments in strategic areas and really re-engineering the systems and the processes. As you touched on, you can't just bring AI to your shop. You've got to look at it, get everything ready, then look at the processes you want to apply AI on, look at the data you want to apply, and really boost your strategic innovation around that. And then the final tenet is really balancing the growing technical debt with strategic investments. Interestingly enough, the more you put AI in, it actually also contributes to technical debt. And you're like, wait, hold on, I don't get that. But if you put it in so fast, you might have sort of developer inefficiencies and code has been put in wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to be really sort of intentional and balanced around that. And we found, Albert, that companies that looked at all 3 of these elements, building, boosting, and balancing, they experience roughly upwards of 60% revenue growth, whilst at the same time increasing their profitability. And it's what we call, the 60-40. So 40% of profitability growth. Just absolutely fantastic.
Well, listen, you mentioned the profit growth. Like I think Klarna just recently announced how they don't need. Imagine seamless customer experiences, fast internet, and the bandwidth required to embrace new technologies. Are you ready to experience the network that makes it all possible? There's no network quite like Zayo's. With North America's largest independently owned fiber network, Zayo provides the backbone, connecting your organization to what's next. Thousands of data centers to cloud on-ramps, towers, and points of presence. Zayo's network carries massive amounts of data globally every single day. What really sets Zayo apart is their coast-to-coast routes spanning from Canada into Mexico that you simply won't find anywhere else. The most innovative companies choose Zayo because they are not just connecting places, but connecting what's next for you. Discover the power of Zayo's network today. www.zayo.com/network. Entire divisions to do some of the front level customer service because they were replacing with AI. They'd mentioned that they were going to get rid of some of their service providers that they, I guess, manually had to use all the time. Like they don't need that anymore. So they've made news there. Separately, I've also seen in the news, for example, like how much does it cost to even run like GPT? I saw that OpenAI currently spends more than $700,000 a day, right? Just to keep. And so when you're sitting down with these, the Global 2000 or Fortune 2000, as you mentioned, and you tell them they got to do all this stuff first to even begin to take advantage. What happens? Do their eyes just glaze over and they're like, oh my God, Andy, you just ruined my day, man. You just told me that my infrastructure's not ready. My team's not ready. I don't got a digital control plan. I'm just thinking of the 7 things you named. And it's like, they must get flustered. They must get flustered. They must be like, wait a second, dude. You just lit me up.
We find, Albert, that the leaders of today and tomorrow are the ones that embrace all that, because they know that to win, just like anything in life, you really got to put in the hard yards, and there are multiple elements of putting in that hard yard. And so we sort of will come down, and we'll maybe bring to bear some of our diagnostics, and we'll say, listen, let's assess your current state. Let's look at where you are in your digital core. Let's define where you are on the index, so to speak. And then we sort of determine what are their ambitions and what are the gaps with where they are now versus where they want to be, so that they can be sort of future state ready. And with those gaps, we can then deploy a roadmap that fits and is fit for purpose for them at the speed that they need for the adoption of it, not just from a system adoption, but also people and change. And so we'll put all of that in place and make it right for them versus sort of a big bang. We find that getting started is the key. If you don't start, you sort of have already lost. So you've got to start and just keep going, much like anything in life.
So we've had a couple different, of course, we have CIOs, CTOs always on our show. And one of the things I've always remembered, because I came from the networking space, is this idea that you mentioned, like, I believe your core tenet one was infrastructure, because they said, hey, listen, if it doesn't matter how good technology is in destination A, if at location B, there's not enough infrastructure to leverage all that technology. Right. I mean, we suffered from that last time when we tried to do our interview the first time, right? Everything's going on my side, everything's going on your side, but the distance between it ain't right. And so when you sit down and you mentioned the leaders that most want to take advantage of this, they're more prepared. Like you mentioned, they're already prepared. They mentally know that they're going to have to make some serious investments. They want to upgrade technology. They want to take advantage of the latest services. Let me ask you a question. When you sit down with them, are they often, let's say, shocked at what needs to happen? Or are they like, is this like as expected? Or are they surprised? Like, wow, I'm further ahead than I thought.
Some are. Those who for many years ago embraced, the technical changes that happened and continued to iterate and maybe continue to change the ways of working of their people, they realize this is just the next step. It's the next evolution. It's the next frontier, and so they embrace it. Others who maybe are, let's say, laggards, but wanting to be leaders, they're not necessarily shocked, but they wonder, how do I best start? And how do I start at a pace and at a rhythm that makes sense for myself and my customers? As you mentioned, there's always A and B. So, if you're a company and you've got, a supply chain of partners and an ecosystem of partners, you've got to make sure that what you're reinventing, just how far are you going in your value chain of reinvention? Are you reinventing just yourself or your partners or the inbound, outbound processes as well? So it really depends, Albert. Many of our clients are not shocked, but really truly embracing the question of, how do I start? How do I best start? Where do I best start? And how do I make sure that I build a digital core whilst adopting new ways of working and new ways of building stuff? Because it's not just about the infrastructure. It's also about some of the controls that, you and I suffered in the first round, where, there were certain blocks put in place.
Yeah, let's talk about those controls. It's always said in sports and said in technology, I've heard many, many times now, which is that you're only as strong as, your weakest link, right? And in that case, in that moment, there wasn't a control plane where anyone could simply say, like, hey, allow this tool to communicate to this website. How do you guys do this? Do you go in and recommend actual like technologies to invest in to do these things? Do you invest in, or do you tell them that they have to have people? Because we've been told also AI readiness isn't just technology; it's also the people that are going to be part of the operation.
Yeah, and I'm glad you raised that. In many cases, it's the long pull is the people. You have people who have the skills to understand the potential of the technology. You have people who can actually work with the technology, design with the technology, redesign processes that exist, build new processes that don't exist, et cetera, et cetera. And so that becomes a long pull as the people. And so we, in our cloud business that I look after, we look at the obviously the infrastructure, we'll look at the security, we'll look at how you integrate stuff, we'll look at your data backbone, your foundation, we'll look at the AI, we'll look at your applications, but we'll also look at your people. We'll bring in maybe our Accenture education business to help, take stock of where are your people today, where do they need to be, and in many cases we have to sort of, dramatically ramp up investments around reskilling people, building their talent, building their technical capabilities. Sometimes an existing employee who really understands, highly competent in what they do in their domain field, but they're ingesting this new technology, they have to have the knowledge of how to sort of work with the technology, how to work with AI models, and so that they can get the confidence of it being a true workmate. And oftentimes we'll help our companies, maybe recruit entirely new roles, things like linguistics experts, or quality control, AI quality controllers. And so we look at it end to end. And it's it comes down, Albert, to the initial diagnostic. You come in, you take a diagnostic of the digital core, you look at their ambitions, including their people, understanding and making sure they understand that they'll have to embrace new ways of working, new ways of building, new ways of designing new systems, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a heavy lift end to end here. And then, of course, as we touched on, we found that right now in our research, just over 40% of respondents have named AI as a top contributor to technical debt. And that's a bit, it can do your head in, but it's important that you therefore design your digital core not just for machines, but for people as well. And so we focus on both sides.
So give me some more tangible examples. That's the number one thing people would assume is like, hey, I'm going to, let's say, upgrade systems, and then I'm going to leverage the newest technologies, and then my processes, my services, whatever, will be better. Right. So it's hard I'm thinking like, man, I'm installing all this stuff and now it's increasing my technical debt. Like, what's going on here, man? Like, explain to our audience, give an example. Like, what does that look like? And then how do I solve for that?
Yeah. A classic example is one of the first core use cases around AI and Gen AI was really around using it to do your development faster. And you apply AI, you give it a hint, and you've got these sort of development AI tools that can help generate the code for you.
Yeah.
But you can imagine that if it generates code for you, you think of that as a starter. You've got to have the human augment that code and make sure that code, is fit for purpose. It's sort of got the right ethical standards and all of that in your shop. Otherwise, you have potentially bad code that is there to help you, that sits dormant in your system, and it doesn't sort of come with the standards you need. And so you have to ensure you employ the right standards, you remove, duplicative code, all those little things. Otherwise, you just end up sort of bringing new technology to the table, and it's adding good value in the short term, but in the long run, it just sits dormant, adding, a level of technical debt.
That was one of the probably simplest explanations and also fantastic. So it reminds me of when we had one of the gentlemen on that identified the Log4j bug.
Yeah.
And they talked about how this was the number one way to build chat applications. I'm just imagining an AI driven code base that says this is the way everyone builds on top of it. They build existing applications on top of it. I think everyone in software knows that the developers kind of, live to their own devices. They kind of Frankenstein things together. They work and they make sure that the thing works. And then I can see exactly what you're saying. You find out there's a vulnerability. And when the Log4j vulnerability was discovered, it was every company in the world that had built chat using Log4j now had a vulnerability. And they all had to retrofit it. It was a huge deal,
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've just got to be careful with what you bring in, and make sure you've got the guardrails in place that are, around your enterprise to really guard how you're using AI, where your AI is, and how it's operating in your shop.
So the way I try to teach my son now, I have two children, I have two sons and a daughter, those three children total, but I always tell them hey man, you got to be smart enough to recognize when AI is wrong. And I'm going to use that case where I think everyone posted screenshots of it where GPT thought that 9.11 was bigger than 9.9. and that made all the rounds. Is that something part of the training? There are a lot of people who don't double check computers, and it's weird that you think that you would have to, but you kind of have to right now, right? Is that something culturally like people maybe they're not ready for, like they haven't thought about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've got there's obviously checking for sort of logical errors
Yeah.
like that. 9.11 being bigger than 9.9. But you've also got to look at things like responsible AI, and is your AI biased in some of its insights or some of its recommendations, and is it being responsible enough? Is it being fair? Is it being transparent? Is it handling your data? Is it handling your data with the right data privacy and all of that? And so there's quite a bit that comes into play. So what we bring in as Accenture is a responsible AI framework that we've built very intentionally with our ecosystem partners. And it's a platform that we deploy at clients that helps you configure, helps you understand your AI, helps you define how you want your AI to act and react and all of that. And so that's another element of capability that companies need to build beyond sort of saying I've got the infrastructure. You've really got to build that digital core with a responsible AI element attached to it.
For yourself, when you think of when you've seen multiple companies that want to take more advantage, whether it's AI or other future services that better build their businesses, has an emerging problem started showing up? Like, do you see like a common error that companies are making, or a common gap that they have to close? I'm thinking, if I'm listening to this episode and I'm new to the information, where should I start? Like, where should I start looking?
Once you've got that digital core, if you've got it in place, and you've got the right ways of working, and your people know, and you've sort of agitated on your processes and sort of re-architected them and all of that. If you've got it in place and you've built it with the right responsible AI tool sets, you're able to adopt new regulations very easily. And oftentimes what we find and what we found as sort of Gen AI sort of really hit the ground running and it sort of became wildfire is a lot of companies stayed in the experimental phase, unable to scale beyond that and truly scale their Gen AI use cases across the company because they hadn't employed the right responsible AI capabilities, and there were sort of restrictions in place. They didn't know how to sort of explain the data. They didn't know how to explain how the AI worked. They didn't know how AI was, really using their data. Are they sort of messing around with data privacy? Are they, going against that? And so we find that to be one of the biggest, let's say, repeatable errors that companies have had, Albert, which is they've gone fast, they've got the technology, and they've got some smart people. So they go check on the tech, check on digital stuff, check on my humans, they can build stuff. But they forgot the sort of nuances around the ethical use, the responsible use, and all of that as it applies to that entire digital core. So now you've got AI going around. Is it causing vulnerabilities? Is it impinging on your data privacy? And if you have a new AI regulation, can you adopt that? Or do you now need to go and re-architect again? And we find that the winners of today and the ones who've sort of put it in place have systematic approaches that are pervasive to really move fast and adopt new technologies. And that's an area that we sort of really push our clients to do is get it right in a very intentional way and go slow if you have to go slow versus sort of just going fast because you feel you're losing ground. Sometimes going slow is better.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it they always say in the military, right? Like, you don't want to rush to failure.
That's a good one. I remember that one.
There's no worse outcome than a poor plan that's well executed. So you did everything. You did a bad move really, really well. Congratulations.
I went to a military boys boarding school, and it was sort of it was the 7 Ps. Yeah, piss poor planning produces poor performance.
Yeah. Well, instead of dwelling on like the bad stuff, tell me about a great use case, because one of the things that I know you've been subjected to is really cool transformations, whether it's to the foundation of the business, whether it's to lines of service. We'd love to hear some of these stories of like, hey, when a plan is really well executed, this is what happens.
Yeah, I'll maybe reflect on one of our leading clients in the fast food retail industry, who decided to really embrace AI and really embrace this concept of edge computing.
Which is weird to think about for fast food.
It is, isn't it? But you're sort of driving your car and you can actually go as far as the edge being in the car, which it is today. And you've got large language, you've got, sort of specialist language models sitting in your car, helping your car function. But if you think about it, this is a company that said, I have a lot of foot traffic coming through my doors every single day. Some of them are, people who are repeat buyers and they know what they want, but I don't know that. They know that, and help me sort of expand how I can serve them and drive engagement up, and help me in areas where it's so far flung remote. I've got could be tens of thousands of centers all over the world. And you can think of New York, where you got small sort of fast food retail, and you can think of a smaller town where it's perhaps bigger. And so the footprint is different. The franchisee owners, so to speak, needed data to understand, how do I serve Albert better? How do I know when Albert's coming in? How do I make sure I've got his order ready to go? How can I maybe cross-sell, upsell to Albert? How do I know Albert maybe prefers drive-through versus walking in, and all of that? And so when you think of the infrastructure needed to be put in place for that, right from your public to your private to your edge posture. And you then think of the data that you need, and you think of the AI you need to apply, and you think of the people you need to have working, and you think of the network that you need to have connected, the physical network.
Exactly.
And when you think of all of that, and then you think of use cases around an Albert who comes in every morning at 9 o'clock for a specific coffee, and maybe sometimes buys something else, you've got to marry all of that. And so that what we found with this particular client is it's a repeatable pattern. Is one, the client really understood what they wanted. Two, the client had a top-down led senior leadership approach. So we are going to do this. Three, they appointed champions. They sort of said, right, we're going to go with, we'll roll out these capabilities. We'll roll out these stores. We'll learn from them. And to your point around failing fast, et cetera, et cetera. And they really, I would say, lit a cultural fire within, the franchisee owners to sort of have winners very quickly. And all other stores then want to say, gosh, that store, their revenue is uplifted, their cross-sell, upsell is uplifted, their foot traffic is uplifted, their digital orders have uplifted, everything. I want a bit of that. And so you start, sort of rolling. But they were, again, very intentional, Albert, on building that digital core and applying those three tenets around building, boosting, and balancing. And with that, revenue up, operational profitability up, et cetera, et cetera. And I would say that for us is one of our marquee credentials, but also just the way they've done it in a very ethical, responsible manner.
Well, I got to ask, are you able to share the name of the restaurant?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay, that's fine. Because I will because I like telling stories of the businesses. I feel like you can tell are investing in technology first and how much better of an experience that is. Because when I think about what your stories, I'm thinking of restaurants, that I've been to that I can clearly tell they've got mobile applications. They have mobile pickup lines. Like they're figuring out ways to make sure that you can get what you want faster. And like, I was always kind of puzzled by like, wait, how do they know to like make my food? Because it was always hot also. Cause of course that's a big experience point for restaurants, right? If you bring me food that's not hot
on time. Yeah.
I'm not going to like that.
Yeah. Frankly, Albert, sort of these sort of moments of disruption also help with innovation. So we saw in COVID a number of clients say, oh my gosh, now I don't have physical people going into a store to buy XYZ. And they had to employ technologies digitally. And they then, coming out of COVID, were able to marry the digital capabilities that they built with the physical. And so now you could go online to look at your favorite jewelry. You could say, I really like this blue sapphire or whatever it is digitally. Then you need to get in your car, drive to the strip mall, and what you want to touch it, you want to walk in. But very few stores have the capability to say, that's Albert. He's just walked through my doors. That's Albert. He likes that blue sapphire. And there are companies out there that are looking at how do I rapidly build the digi-fizzy connection to allow an Albert to shop online, get in his car, drive to the mall, park the car, walk through the doors. And that's the critical point. The minute you walk through the doors, how do they identify that's Albert? And then the store clerk comes up to you and says, hi, Albert, great to see you. I know you like your blue sapphire. It's far right over there.
Without invading privacy and all that other stuff. Yeah. It's going to be a delicate.
Yeah, it's delicate. And that level of experience, that context, and that sort of, private data point that you just raised, it's all very important, but you can see and feel that use case. And you as Albert will go, wow, this is brilliant. And, off you go.
Yeah, I feel like the hospitality industry is... Imagine a world where your data flows like electricity, unseen, yet powering everything you do. A world where high availability, low latency, and disaster recovery are not just expectations, but realities. Welcome to the future, powered by Zayo's network. Zayo has meticulously designed North America's largest independent fiber network, a network that isn't just vast, but strategically planned, connecting the places that matter most to you. Thousands of data centers, cloud on-ramps, towers, and critical points of presence. Cross-continental routes unique to Zayo offer connections that you just can't find anywhere else. Zayo provides routing diversity that ensures your operations never skip a beat, and ultra-low latency for when microseconds matter. In a world that never stops, Zayo is the network underneath it all, helping the most innovative and forward-thinking companies grow. Because Zayo doesn't just connect places, they connect possibilities. Discover the power of Zayo's network today. Visit www.zayo.com/network. One of the ones that's embracing this the most, because I feel like, it used to be right in Vegas, if you were a whale, you would get that kind of service. Now they didn't use data. They didn't use data like the way we think of it. Like
I haven't experienced Vegas that way.
Yeah. I've never been treated that good, but I was fortunate enough to go with someone that was, a big deal, and it was pretty cool. Yeah, like we went to the room and for those of you guys that don't know, the super high rollers, they will bring a table to your room. Like,
oh, blimey.
You know what I mean? Like if you like playing blackjack, they'll like have one in your room.
Blimey.
And it's pretty fancy, but that level of like personal touch, but even like the hotel chains nowadays, right? Like hotels knowing that, hey, I don't like being that near the elevator because I don't want to hear the dinging all night long, right? But certain hotel chains were quicker to like put that as a feature of my loyalty profile than others. And like those things now are very noticeable, because I remember talking to someone in the hotel industry saying like, once you reach a certain number of loyalty points or nights, you're kind of in the system. Like you're not going to go somewhere else. And so like they're talking about the race to get you to stay 10 times or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. No, I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah. For yourself, one of the things we always want to do at IT Visionaries is kind of meet the people who our guests are. You got a pretty interesting background. It looks like you were at AWS. How did you get into technology?
But thanks. So, it's an interesting one. I didn't come from technology. I didn't really study technology in school. I came out as a mechanical engineer, and that's obviously a form of technology. But in terms of computing technology, back at the time, I didn't. I needed a job, and I was fortunate enough for my company, Accenture at the time, had a sort of engineering hub in the south of France, and they asked me to, would I be interested in joining, and they would give me all the training and all of that. So, I jumped on a plane and went over there, passed the interview, and bedded down, lived in the south of France for a good number of years, and was trained and schooled in sort of fixing systems, in how systems integrate A to B, and fixing them, and really flying all over the world, addressing and fixing these problems before they became issues. But as time unfolded, your personal life kicks in, and I got married. My wife's in Seattle, so I moved to Seattle about 18 years ago. And I've been in Accenture now for about 26 years. And I moved from being a fix-it guy, fixing issues, technical issues, and sort of getting the code working and the interfaces working, to building and solving bigger problems, and really partnering with clients like and partners like Microsoft and Amazon, and in recent times Google and Oracle. And that's been really my focus over the last 18 years, is really working with these high potential cloud and AI partners, and the ecosystem of cloud and AI partners. As you said, I spent a good number of years as Accenture working with AWS, but also with Microsoft, and most recently with Google and OCI. I have evolved over time from being that fixer guy to be now building the businesses with them, and in the purpose of solving our joint client sort of challenges and opportunities. And it's an area that I love. It's an area that marries quite a lot of who I am. Yeah, I now really focus strongly on getting our partnerships right, the cloud ecosystem partners right, making sure we've got the right strategic alignment, the right technical capabilities, the right cultural fit, making sure that we're stitching together the right solutions for our clients, and that we've got the right humans actually physically taking those solutions to our clients and making sure that we are fit for purpose. And that's really what I do. But I'm based in Seattle. Like you, I think you said 3. I've got 2 kids.
There you go.
A boy and a girl, and they eat up my non-work time, so to speak.
Well, that's the one next thing I wanted to ask you is, one of the things that's really, I would say, uncommon in tech is longevity at a company.
Yes.
I mean, we see actual founders just step away from their companies. Like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. But it's interesting.
What's kept you there? Like, that's a long time. 26 years is a long time. I mean, it is. Right? What's kept you there?
Yeah, but it really doesn't, because I had 4 years in the south of France where I worked all over sort of mainland Europe and APAC. I had 4 years in the UK, and where I worked across multiple clients. So you're sort of 3 months here, 3 months there. It's kind of you're starting afresh. And in the last 18 years, I've spent time at Microsoft. I've spent time at AWS. I've spent time now with Google. But you're working with multiple clients in multiple industries. And so the industry that I'm in, consulting, as you touched on at the beginning, some people may not be aware, but it is a long 26 years, but it's also not, because you're spending time with different clients, different industries, different countries, different contexts, different challenges, different questions that they're saying. I would like to uplift my revenue by 50%. How would you do that? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it just feels fresh every single day. It's really energizing every day. So yes, it's 26 years is a long time, but at the same time, I feel anew every day.
Okay. So now, I want to ask you some fun questions, because you got an awesome background. You've had a long career. I got to ask you some more fun questions. What level of status do you currently have with the airlines? Because consultants fly all over the place. How many miles do you think you put on?
I'd have to ask my wife. She's more interested in that. I genuinely am more interested in getting from A to B as quickly and as efficiently, as fast as I can. I genuinely, but yeah, I've sort of honed in on how much time I need to leave to get from either the office to the airport, from home to the airport, to get through the lines as quickly as I can. But I'm in and out, but I don't know. I'll check that. But you do travel quite a bit.
Because you travel a lot, that means you're also very much, you get to experience the hotel, hospitality, and obviously transportation industries, which everyone typically has to do if they want to go on vacation. So give us an idea. What are some of your favorite places you've gotten to go? What are some favorite service providers? Do you have a favorite airline? Do you have favorite, restaurants? Like, we'd love to hear it.
Just recently, earlier this week, I was in Bogota, Colombia. As you know, I've been there on and off for the last 2 or 3 weeks. My daughter was selected to play in the U20 Women's World Cup.
That's awesome.
Which was taking place in Bogota, Colombia. So I was there as in a fan capacity, and when you're sort of there, you obviously you pick a hotel, and I try to pick the same chain, and I try to pick the same airline. But your question is interesting because I really, when I think of your question, it's less about the actual name of the hotel or the airline, but it's the experience. Like, what sort of experience do you want? And you kind of want an experience that is fit for purpose, you know. And when you're traveling with your family, it might be different than when you're traveling with your business. And
That's
so
true.
it's just very interesting to see how it all plays out. But I sat in a stadium, and people are coming up to you, and they're trying to sell you whatever it is, peanuts or water or whatever, because it was hot. And you sort of think that's a nice experience, and it's as simple as someone walking up to you. And nowadays, we're involved in helping companies drive new fan engagement experiences, and working with it's public, working with companies like the NFL in looking at how are they embracing technologies, and how are they building their digital core to drive new experiences for us, the not just us, the sort of consumer on the other end of the screen, but also telecasters and also the players themselves, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just really interesting to see how technology is now pervasive in every aspect of our lives, from the challenges we were having getting online and resolving that, to jumping on a plane, to going to hotels, going into a stadium, and vacationing whilst having technology all around you. It's just amazing.
I've picked up on little pieces of what you just said in there, and I agree fully that applications and software are best suited to enable physical things I can tangibly touch and feel experiences. I was thinking about as you were talking about your experience, I'm in a better position. I can name the airline. I can name the airline, but I was flying Qatar Air, and I was gonna be late. I was gonna be like the connection time was so small. My plane was late. They're like odds of making it super low. I come off the plane. There was a person waiting for me, and they had a different line that you could go through. And like they could get me like rush me to my plane to connect. And I remember the guy was like, he was really concerned because he's like, I see you have a checked bag on the flight. It's like, your bag probably won't make it. Like, do you want to fly? And I'm like, damn, like, let's go. I don't want to.
Get me over that.
Yeah. But it was cool because like, instead of like me just showing up at the gate and being like, oh, I don't have an option, or me getting in my app that can't refresh. I mean, it was cool to have someone kind of take me through that. And so I agree with you. I think technology is best suited to, of course, enhance the experience, but I think nothing beats physical experiences. And when you were using that fast food example, I was like, fast ordering with hot food and fast pickup, like people love that. Like it's hard to beat, right? And that's why. And I'll name this restaurant. It's fine. That's why when people see a line at Chick-fil-A and it's long as all get out, they don't care.
They're always long.
They don't care. They know it's going to be fast.
Yeah. but it's that feel, it's that experience, right? Be it you're rushing through an airport and then the guy says, hey, your bag's like, it's that feel that it makes you feel good. Like, okay, this is amazing. Technology is working for me, and that is really what we in the sort of consulting industry with our clients aim to do is help drive a rich feel for our clients, but also for their customers.
Well, listen, if you're listening to this show and you're on the fence about upgrading your digital capability or your digital core, as Andy and Accenture says, to deliver these experiences, I agree with Andy. You are missing out. I don't know. I can't imagine what the tolerance level for bad experiences is going to be in the future. Like, you and I have limited tolerance, but I feel like our kids have zero tolerance. Like they.
Oh, totally. And you want to get it right with your client, but oftentimes another piece of advice that we sort of give to our clients is try not to necessarily go it alone. Go with partners, because with partners you've got deep experience, expertise, lessons learned. You've got investments that they've sort of already placed that you can leverage. You've got deep talent that they already have that you can leverage. And so we're very intentional, Albert, in stitching our capabilities. This is a core part of my job, stitching our capabilities right across the breadth and depth of Accenture with that of our cloud partners, and building solutions. And we're just super excited. We recently launched and announced two announcements in the public domain. One with AWS, where we sort of have built this automated end-to-end platform, that helps to implement and scale responsible AI, as I touched on. And the second with Google Cloud, which is really looking to advance AI adoption and cybersecurity. And so, part of that experience in that field is making sure that we bring the right ecosystem partnerships to our clients to make it real for them.
There you go. Well, Andy, thank you for joining us today on IT Visionaries. If there's one thing I pervasively heard throughout the discussion with you today, is that, listen, companies, if you're out there, get your digital core right. I can clearly remember step one because I always think of the first step. He mentioned infrastructure. Get your infrastructure right. If it's not right, it doesn't matter how good your AI and your tooling is at location A. If at location B, it can't receive it. Okay, so
it's much like anything in life. You got to get A and B working together in unison.
There you go, and that can only be done through infrastructure. Andy, I want to say thank you for joining us today on IT Visionaries. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Albert, it was an absolute joy. Thank you so much. Really good stuff. Cheers, mate.